I didn't even know I was a workroom. Had no idea. Didn't have the right equipment or anything. Kept thinking I was going to get out of this business because I fell into it. I didn't choose it. I've just built up a reputation as an efficiency expert in the workroom. I will take my mistakes, my struggles, and turn those into lessons because I don't want workrooms who are coming into the business to suffer the same thing.
How do you define efficiency in a workroom beyond just like moving faster?
Quality, continuity, low error rate. That's efficiency. Studying your error rate will help you catalog them, analyze them, and figure out where your weaknesses are. And that helps too. You can target them. Perfectionism isn't going to do you any good. You have to change your mindset.
It's time for another episode of Marketing Pains, the podcast about marketing for window treatment and awning companies.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing Pains, the podcast where we talk with real window treatment and awning professionals about what's working in marketing, what's changing in the industry, and how to grow smarter. Today's guest is someone who's spent over 3 decades inside the workroom, not just working in it, but constantly refining how it runs. She built and operated her own workroom for more than 30 years before recently stepping away from production to focus fully on what she's become known for in the industry, helping workrooms become more efficient. She's taught at major industry conferences, developed training programs, and works directly with teams to improve workflow, reduce wasted motion, and ultimately make businesses more profitable and sustainable. If you ever felt like the workroom is busy all the time and you're still struggling to keep up, this conversation is going to hit home. Welcome to the show, Ann Johnson.
Thanks, Will. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. So let's jump in. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what's keeping you busy right now.
Okay, well, history. What gives me a license to teach other workrooms? I started in 92. I worked, and I'll tell you what, I didn't even know I was a workroom. Had no idea, didn't have the right equipment or anything. Kept thinking I was going to get out of this business because I fell into it. I didn't choose it. In 2006, I had been going to a workroom networking group, and the owner of the place who always hosted us asked me to come work for him as workroom manager. And I thought, hot dog, no more cutting and covering boards and work, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And after 2 years, I realized that I just wasn't employee material anymore. You work for yourself. It's hard to go back.
Yes.
So what I learned in that 2 years, because he had 5 sewists and a whole staff behind that. So they were putting work through this custom workroom, unbelievable amounts of work. And he was all about efficiency. Always, how he put it, tweaking, processes. Yeah. So when I walked away from that business, from him, still friends, he developed the class on efficiency because it brought it home. And then the more I teach it, the more it brings it home. It also keeps it in my brain so that when I was working, I was on top of all this, but I was always grabbing other people's ideas. This workroom did this. Well, that's intriguing. Let me try it. Oh, I like it. I'm going to include it, or doesn't work for me, but I might still include it and say pros and cons, right? So
Fair enough.
Because the way I do it isn't necessarily the way somebody else wants to do it, right? And so I've just built up the reputation as an efficiency expert in the workroom. When I give a class and the whole class gasps, oh, that's my moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I've taught workrooms that have been in business longer than I have, 35 plus years. And they always walk away and say, wish I'd known that sooner, right? So that's where I'm coming from, is efficiency, intentional efficiency, thinking about it every day and constantly looking at your processes and seeing what can I do to make it better.
Yeah. That's awesome. We're going to dive into some of that today, by the way. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more. Now, you spent decades actually doing the work before stepping into the teaching side. And I think a lot of our listeners are kind of in that phase, where they're listening. When you look back at the early workroom days, what were you doing the hard work way that you see different now?
everything.
Okay.
Every stinking thing. I didn't have the table, the machines, the tools, right? And because those first 15 years, I kept thinking, well, maybe I won't stick with this, right? I wouldn't invest. And it
Right.
wasn't until I was meeting other workrooms or going to George's workroom meetings and seeing what he had, then I picked up a couple of machines. But I still, again, back then, workrooms were not charging what they needed to charge, right? So I never had enough to go out and pay for, invest in. And I just kept thinking, oh, next year I might not be in this anymore. So why get into it? It wasn't until I left George's, I'm like, okay, I'm stuck in this.
Yeah.
I now need to make the investment. There were no professional patterns when I started, right? Everything was singer sewing for the home and the library, doing everything the hard way. And then my first client who got me into this was a designer who was extra creative. So there was no references. And so it was all doing it the hard way. And a lot of times I will take my mistakes, my struggles, and turn those into lessons because I don't want workrooms who are coming into the business to suffer the same thing, right? So yeah, I pretty much did everything wrong for the first 15 years.
Oh, too funny. You mentioned not having the right tools early on. How much did that affect like the overall efficiency day to day?
Oh, everything. And I had no idea, right?
Sure.
I was just struggling. Okay, so, the right tool is your table, a padded table. You can pin things into it. It's at the right height. It's the width. It's 60 inches wide for a width of fabric, and it can be as long as you can make it. And so I started out on a ping pong table. And then it collapsed on me. So I took half of it and propped it up on a couple of folding tables. And I was making full length, wide panels on a half a ping pong table with no padding. So you can't get any more inefficient than that.
Yeah.
Totally. Because
Yeah.
I refuse to take and invest the money, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. So before we get too far, how do you define efficiency in a workroom beyond just like moving faster?
Right, right. So efficiency isn't necessarily going as fast as you can. It's better quality for sure, because you've got a happier client. You put out the same product every time. You get the same details. Your clients know what to expect.
Right.
And that's what they get, right? That's efficiency, having standards and that sort of thing. And also keeping your error rate low. Right? There's so many details and numbers that go through the workroom. And especially if you're handing stuff off to employees or subcontractors, there's even another level where things can go wrong. So setting up processes and all to keep those things moving through the workroom. So what did I say? Quality, continuity, low error rate. That's efficiency.
Yeah. And that's, what's the very well-known book, The E-Myth? Right.
Yes.
That was all about McDonald's, for example, always making the same burger the same way every time. And the output's always the same. So
exactly. And they had processes for it.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm aware now, Amazon does the same thing.
Sure.
They've got processes and they've got things set up so that the workers don't have to go hunt the right box or bag or whatever. It's all folded into that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So for somebody that's listening who maybe feels like they're constantly busy but behind, what's usually the real issue here? Is it workload or workflow?
Okay, I'm going to go with workflow on that because workload is controllable, quote unquote, because you can say no, right? You can back your clients up. They might squawk, but then send them on their way. They're not your client.
Or you can hire more people, right? I mean, it's a solvable problem.
Yeah, no. You never hire somebody new when you're under stress.
Okay, fair enough.
Ask me how I know. It's just too hard because bringing somebody in under stress, if you don't have documentation and processes in place, you can't teach them, right? And then you're constantly overseeing them. And there's only one employee that I always recommend hiring. And because a lot of employees work at their own, most employees, they work at their own speed. And I've seen this in workrooms, right? People are like, I don't know how to make them work faster. You either have a little buzzy bee who is just so fast and loves what they're doing and wants to do more. Rare. It's very rare. You've got the good, steady workers in between. But more often than not, you've got the ones that are just going to work at their own pace and they don't care what the schedule is or anything. So that gets frustrating if you're a very high energy person, right?
Yeah.
Did I get off the question there? So with work,
Pretty good.
yeah, with workload though, you can like say no or back them off or whatever, but workflow is always there. And if you have bottlenecks or whatever, then you're always going to come up against those, and they're always going to slow you down at the bottlenecks. And those are what you need to, and or an underreported or thought about is error rate. That's really quite important because that's a huge bottleneck. If you're having trouble moving stuff through the workroom and you get a lot of errors, either in the workroom, you're having to redo something, or you go to the install and there's something wrong and you have to bring it back and redo it. That's all the worst thing, right? Yeah. Right. So studying your error rate will help you, catalog them, analyze them, and figure out where your weaknesses are. And that helps too. You can target them.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Let's get into the real day-to-day stuff. I think a lot of people don't realize kind of where they're losing time. So imagine you walk into a workroom for the first time. What are the first inefficiencies you usually notice?
Okay, let's talk about drapery panels because that's the most common thing everybody does. And I used to do it this way. They cut all their panels, and then they split the ones they need to split. And then they spend time shuffling everything back together into panels, right? And then that's number one, that's a lot of extra work, doing all that shuffling. And number two, now you're setting yourself up for an error of 2 right panels or 2 left panels because you didn't put them back together in the right order. And then bringing it back to the table after you shuffle everything, bringing it back to the table, and then going along and glue basting or taping or pinning to pattern match, right? So that you can sew your seam. Whereas if you simply cut your widths in the right order, split them in the right order, and stack them, you go straight to the machine, and there's a method to pattern match right at the machine without doing all that pre-work. Every time you take that treatment back to the table, you are handling it too much, right? So if we can eliminate some of those steps back, and that's been, somebody once said, I just took 30% of the time off of their making panels with that.
Yeah.
Workrooms also, I call them crutches, time wasters. Somewhere along the line, something catastrophic happened, right? And it caused all sorts of trouble. Now they worry. And one of them is length of panels, right? They went to hang them. They were too long. They were too short. They grew or whatever. And so now they hang up every panel that they fabricate. That's a waste of time, And this is where I have to go to them and say, no, you've been doing this long enough. You know which fabrics are good and which fabrics are bad, right? So the fabrics that you know are good and stable and all, make up your panel, trust your work, and get it out. If you have a fabric that you're not too sure of, go ahead and hang that one, right? But we clutch sometimes these crutches because we're afraid, because of something that happened in the past.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely makes sense.
And you could probably look at just about every type of treatment out there. In the last, I'm most familiar now with drapery panels, Roman shades, various versions, and box pleated valances, simple box pleated valances, because that's all anybody's made in the last 6-8 years, right? So if you go back to Swags and Kingston valances and the frou-frou stuff, those aren't going to be as efficient because you don't do them as often, right? You don't have that, but you can really get those core treatments down. Panels have often been thought of sometimes as a loss leader, and they shouldn't be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some great tips. You've already affected a couple hundred workrooms, I think, just with this.
We'll see.
So what are some common habits that feel normal to owners, but are actually killing their productivity?
Hoarding fabric. And, they have leftover fabric. They don't know what to do with it. Or they're always, someday I'll make pillows out of this, right? And it piles up around them. And so keeping extra leftovers in your workroom, in your actual work area, slows you down because you're working around it. It's also eliminating space for your tools and materials that you use on a daily basis, and keeping them near you, right? And then one of the biggest things is perfectionism. If you go to any group and you say, who defines himself as a perfectionist, more than half the hands go up, and it's like, no, don't do that. By definition, perfectionism is not attainable, right? And this is fabric. It's not even like stone or wood. It's fabric. It has a life of its own, and it's going to do what it damn well pleases. Sorry about that. And so I'm trying now to get people to look more to get perfectionism. Oh, how do I move forward on this? I can't make it perfect, or I can't follow this standard, or whatever. And then they freeze up and they're not happy with what they did. Whereas if you tell yourself, I'm striving for excellence, okay? It literally, just that word takes a load off your shoulders.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, I'm doing the very best I can. I'm putting out an excellent product. People love my work. They keep coming back. Perfectionism isn't going to do you any good. You have to change your mindset.
I like that. I've heard the phrase done is better than perfect.
Oh, yes. Love that phrase.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I do like excellent is better than perfect, right? That keeps that excellence in mind. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really good. So are there any specific workflow breakdowns you see over and over again across the different shops that you visit?
The shops that I go into, and lately I've been going into more that are multiple employees, and a couple last year were designers bought their workroom.
Okay.
Because the workroom owner was tired and wanted to quit, retire, but the designers didn't want to lose them.
Yeah.
And assuming that the workroom has 2 or 3 employees that know how to do the work, right? And so, but the designers would then call me because they were like, I can't believe how slow these people are, right? And a lot of it was because the workroom owners had been in the business too long, were tired, and weren't out there learning new, right? They were just like caught up in their own. So I would say the most common thing is doing it the way you always did it. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes that's almost inevitable because you have, it's like a spiral, right? You have this huge workload and you're just killing yourself trying to get it done. And there's got to be a better way. You go to conferences, you come home, your head's ringing, and you've got all these great ideas, but oh my gosh, you got those deadlines. So you jump right back in to doing it the way you always did. Yeah. And so you never quite get, and you don't give yourself permission to step back and take a week off or a couple of days. And you get so overwhelmed, you just don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
That's where sometimes whenever I teach, here we go. I'm going to assign your listeners homework.
Okay.
Whenever I teach a class, any class, and the 4-day workroom hands-on class, they have to do this every night, is through the course of the class, write down 3 things. I don't care if it's tips, it's a technique, a process, a tool that you're going to immediately use when you get back to your workroom. You're going to order it, you're going to practice it, and you're going to make it happen in your workroom. If this way, they go home with a targeted list, right?
Mhm.
And if they have more, then make 2 or 3. One lady said, "Can I make a list for my husband?" Because he worked with her. I was like, "Yeah, go for it." But this helps narrow your brain down. You've learned so much. You don't know where to start. You're overwhelmed. You have to just jump right back into that gopher wheel again, and you don't give yourself time
Yeah.
to learn something new.
Yeah. There's something to be said for speed to implementation, right?
Yeah.
Just like mentally having some sort of a win, when you're trying to
Mhm.
improve something, if it's just little, it
Yes.
invigorates you to then do more.
Yes. 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 It does. You don't have to write all your documentation in 2 days, right?
Right.
You're working on a job, just jot down the steps as you go along and take pictures. You just created documentation,
Yep.
right? Numbers. I just did a class in Massachusetts on numbers through the workroom. And at first I struggled, I was like, I'm going to give them this whole package so they can just use my forms. And the more I worked at it, the more I struggled, because there are so many numbers that come in from different directions that go into every job, and everybody thinks differently, right?
Right.
So all I could do was show them samples, talk about the steps along the way, and have them go back and step back and study. I mean, we're all doing it because I started before forms and everything. It was always that scribbled out. I'd take a piece of paper and I'd scribble out the specifications, and I would had a measure sheet that was just a drawn window and numbers that I usually, missed measuring half of them. And, then I'd calculate how much fabric on this piece of paper, and I'd calculate my labor and the final cost. And usually, especially if I was on the road, forget something and keep telling myself, I need a checklist. Why am I not using a checklist? But I was always so charging ahead, even as a teacher. This is a do as I say, not as I do thing, right?
Yeah.
But if you go back and you look at the way that you receive the quote, you calculate all the details for the quote, however you're doing it now on paper by hand, you could lay this out and realize you're doing it the same way for every job.
Mhm.
Now, let's just take this one part of it where we have the most errors and make it a checklist or make it a form we fill out. Well, that worked. Let's do another one, right? It is baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. For somebody who maybe hasn't taken your course or any course lately or been to a conference,
Mhm.
if they want to improve efficiency, what's something they should evaluate first?
Error rate. Evaluate your error rate and how your numbers and your information flows through your workroom. Okay. That's where you spot your weaknesses. And then from there are so many opportunities out there. If they go to the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Library, they have all the old webinars from the old Custom Furnishings Academy. They used to do webinars every month, and they have those archived in the library. I don't know what the Pro Plus level costs, but I know it's very reasonable for the information there. So you go and you start watching those webinars. So you're going to get lessons. The Workroom channel has online classes, very reasonably priced. Go and take those. If you're part of WCAA, they have years of webinars. Their lunch and learn webinars, they archive all of those, and I'm in a lot of them. And the WCAA virtual group does their own monthly webinars, and they archive those. So you can go, there is so much information out there. The Workroom channel on YouTube, method shares, they're short videos, but they give you they show you how to put a zipper in a pillow. They show you how to pattern match at the machine. Little things so that you learn it and incorporate it, and then move forward to the next one.
Love
Right.
that. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier on getting the right tools and investments
Mhm.
that counts as tools and investments for
Totally.
your business.
Totally. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. What does a well-designed workflow actually look like in practice? Is there a way that you could verbalize that?
Maybe.
Okay.
um, so a well-designed workflow is we could do workflow or workroom. Well designed. Let's go with workroom.
Okay.
When you receive materials, supplies, hardware, that sort of thing, having one place for them to go into. And I had created, and I did have a couple forms I used, and I had a receiving form so that I knew what, I could fill that out for for everything coming in for a job, and
Mhm.
then kept that binder next to where I received things, right? And I always insisted that all hardware came to me also so that I could unpack it and make sure all the pieces, parts fit together, that I've got the right finish, that sort of thing. So that's a checklist, a quality checklist thing, so that there's not that error. And same with the fabrics and everything. And then I had a method to store. Once everything was checked in, there was a place for trims to go, right? They would be labeled as to the client and everything. And those trims would go on a special shelf. The hardware, the long poles, would go back out. My studio's in my house, so they went back out on tables in the garage because they were long. They took up too much room. But the box with all the brackets and finials stayed in the workroom on the shelf off to one side so that I could pull them when I was actually doing fabrication to double check returns and number of rings and everything.
Yep.
So you have a receiving space. That's important. And at the receiving space are the scissors and the tags and the marking pens and everything you need. And then once you receive, it goes into very specific space, fabric under the table, trim on the shelf, brackets on the shelf, and poles out in the. Now, this all sounds well and good, but you can get overwhelmed in a hurry, right?
Yeah.
And then at your table where you work, and if you have multiple workers, each one of these should have, under my table was the fabric pending, right? Waiting to be fabricated. But also, we tend to stand in one specific corner of our tables, just whatever our setup is, its habit, right?
Yeah.
So right there is my rulers on a shelf under the lip of the table, all the tools and supplies I use on most jobs right there, and smaller stuff a step behind me, right? On the shelves behind me. So having everything that you work with on a daily basis right there, and anything you don't work with on a daily basis set to one side makes a big difference. And then there was a place to put the finished treatments. After they were bagged and tagged, there's a place for them. So that's a good workflow. I could tell you about a workroom in, I want to say Boston or New Jersey, and it used to be a slaughterhouse, right? And they had several rooms downstairs where these people worked. And they had UPS stuff coming in over here, and they had UPS stuff coming over here. And, it was time. They had no plan. They didn't have, you had to go around hunting for everything. And that's not a good workflow.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I said, the forms and the numbers catching and that you carry from one step to the next is important also.
Yeah. As I said it before, but I'm sure you're affecting workrooms that are listening to this just with these great tips. So I appreciate that. That's great. And it's funny how somebody could be listening that's been doing this for 20 years, like you said, 15, 20 years. I never even thought of that. Why don't we do that? And just making that one little change improves their profit. It improves their bottom line at the end of the day.
It reduces their stress. One of the things I do is I give them permission, to not be perfect, to go ahead and do it this way, even though everything they ever read said you did it that way. It's okay to do it this way because that is faster and it's causes you less problems in the long run or whatever. And I've often been told that just like, you give me permission, right?
Yep.
I kind of, yes. Anytime I teach, I mean, what I'm giving you now is like high level tips and techniques. When I teach, whether it be a 1.5 hour class or 4 days of fire hose, I give a lot. And yes, I overwhelm, especially that 4-day class. By the 3rd day, they're all like, I'll say, do you want to make a sample of that? And they're like, no, just keep teaching. But I also give documentation and follow up, with reference and stuff. The 4-day class is a 160-page student manual.
Wow.
That was literally a brain dump when I first made it up. It is not publishable. It is ugly, but they're like, oh yeah, I reference that every week. So as long as, I can give lots of tips and techniques and processes and that sort of thing, but I need to follow up with documentation, links to what I referred to before, the method shares, or go watch this webinar that'll, flesh it out even more or something. So yeah, that's important.
Yeah, very good. This episode of Marketing Pains is sponsored and underwritten by my own company, Window Treatment Marketing Pros. First of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to listen to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And I hope that you're gaining some knowledge, tidbits, good information that will help your business grow. Window Treatment Marketing Pros is the only digital marketing company that works specifically with window treatment and awning companies around the U.S. We handle entire digital marketing campaigns from website design to SEO and more. With over 23 years of experience in the digital marketing arena, we can help your business get more website traffic, leads, and phone calls. We work with businesses that are experiencing significant growth or businesses that want to experience significant growth. And we have plans to fit most of those companies. If you're ready to invest in your business, you want the phone to ring more, and you have the resources to handle that growth, please schedule a short discovery call with me. I'd love the opportunity to talk with you about your business, your vision for the future, and your ultimate goals for your company. Schedule that today, and I look forward to meeting you. In the meantime, back to today's episode. In the world of personality tests, I've been labeled as a quick start. And a quick start is somebody who sees the new object and they go after it, right? So I think it would be good for people that are like that hear about all these efficiencies and like, we got to go implement all these. How we need to talk about balance, right? How do they balance efficiency, keep quality, and especially if their teams are already under some stress?
Right. So especially if you have a team, you have to take the stress off of them as much as you can. Hourly workers are not paid to take the stress. That's my thing. Like I said, baby steps, getting started, how to balance
yes.
the stress and the efficiency. You have to set boundaries. Okay. A lot of workrooms don't set boundaries. They'll answer the phone or reply to emails at any time during the day. Laura Nelson, we just came from her workroom on that workroom tour that I did with Janelle, and her workroom tour is going to come up on the YouTube channel somewhere soon. And she has hours 10 to 4. She doesn't, she gets up, she starts working at 8 and she might work past 4 or whatever, but 10 to 4 is when she responds to emails for her clients and that sort of thing. Not before, not after. And I have found when there was a couple of years, and 2015 is my biggest learning year, let's put it that way, that created a whole webinar on what not to do.
Okay.
Because I was just inundated with work, right? And instead of making good decisions, see, when you get under stress, you stop making good decisions. You're like, oh, I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to do right now. We'll just wing it. No, you don't wing it. That just, oh my gosh. So I did a whole webinar on that. So you have to give yourself boundaries. You have to say, no, I'm not going to work all night. I am not going to work on weekends. I am going to work, and everybody's different. If you have young children and your husband's home on Saturdays, maybe you'll work while the kids are at school and then on most of Saturday, right? Everybody works out their own, but you have to put those hours on your wall. You have to post them. You have to put them in your contract with your client.
Yeah.
Post them, right? And remind them over and over again, because, and people start to, they will respect that, right? But if you don't respect yourself, then they'll just keep coming at you. And so that's where you get your balance and your stress, by taking care of yourself, by setting boundaries, setting hours, giving yourself time away. Maybe even she will work 3 weeks a month and take the fourth week off, but that's her week for playing catch up. That's her week on, bookwork or whatever, or experimenting with something new or whatever. So that's her way of maintaining her sanity and growing, because she gives herself that time off. But you have to discipline yourself for it, right?
Yeah.
Because we all want to oh, they want that. They're moaning, it's just like,
yeah.
Oh, I hated that question. And I could always see it coming through the phone. So no pressure, but
yeah.
when it might be done? It's like, in my last 3 or 4 years or so, I was helping take care of my folks, as they neared end of life and stuff. And so you never knew when you had to drop everything, go to the emergency ward or something like that, right? And I was very, very lucky to have a very strong support system here, but I was the key person, who handled their
teams are under pressure.
I started answering with the question, well, do you have a date? Do you know when it'll be done? Or can you have it done by this date? My answer was always, sure, pending unforeseen circumstances. I just always put that on there, because you never know what life's going to hit you with. So you have to, if you always jump for your client, then that's what they're going to expect, right? You need to jump for yourself. So that's handling stress and quality.
Yep.
And efficiency.
Yeah. You mentioned hitting that burnout at one point. And I think that's something a lot of people in our industry, quietly deal with. What led to that burnout for you? Was it volume, lack of systems, or something different?
Yes. And yes. So I took on a new designer the fall before that, in 2014. And she's a nice lady, a little manipulative, right? But I could handle her, right? And so as we flowed into January, she had 3 houses that we were doing. And this was on top of my regular workload, but I wanted to impress her and, draw her in so that I could keep her. And so also at the time, my kids are gone. My husband doesn't need me to fuss over him for dinner or anything like that. So I'd say, well, I could work a little later every day. And she was constantly calling up and, well, can you have this 2 weeks from today? And I'd be like, oh, my client's going to be so upset. And so I would oh, yeah, okay, 2 weeks. That's plenty of time. And of course it wasn't, but I, was managing them. And I was also, because I was under so much stress, and all 3 houses were on the east side, which is over an hour away. Right. So just popping over there to check a measure or something would have taken some time.
Yeah.
Now, if I'd have been smart, I would have taken a day and gone over there and double checked all the measures through the house. I had sent somebody else to do the measures, and there were a couple that were wrong. So a couple things started coming back, and I had a job that 4 long cuts of Scalamandra fabric folded on my table between my machines, where it was safe and out of the way until I could work on it. My oil can fell over, and I didn't know it. And I had a huge oval grease ring in the middle of those 4. Oh. Panic. I figured out how to salvage 2, but had to spend $800 buying more. So there come the hits, and the stress. Things start coming back. They're making mistakes. And then boom, like in September, I just ran right into a brick wall, metaphorically speaking, of course, and spent most of the rest of the year chasing errors, chasing problems. So when I went back and I looked at my net income from 2014 and my net income from 15, my gross was like 25% higher. My net was only about $5,000 more
Wow.
for all those hours and all that stress. It's not worth it. You have to take care of yourself and not let other people tell you how to run your business or what your hours should be or when you should deliver. That's for you to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. How often do you see burnout tied directly to the inefficient processes?
Oh yeah, you see it. You talk to people and you see it. And some of it too is life, what's going on in their lives doesn't help, right? Which is all the more reason you have to set boundaries with your clients, right? And get the help you need if you
Right.
can. And this goes back to charging enough to be able to bring in somebody to clean your house for you or mow your lawn, right? And the one worker that I tell every workroom to hire, I hired a friend who needed money, right? She struggled to work in the real world because of ADHD or, whatever. She was just flighty as all get out. You gave her a list at the beginning of the day and then you didn't pay attention to how she got it done because she'd be all over the place, but she'd get it done. She was proud of what she did. The years that I had her working for me, my productivity skyrocketed because an unskilled utility worker, that's what they call them, a utility worker, an unskilled utility worker paid at hourly wage can do everything right up to the point where you pull the fabric out and start fabricating the skilled part. And then when you get to a certain point in the fabrication process, you can hand it back to them to finish it off, right? So I think workrooms, I keep trying to tell workrooms that, and I don't think they truly understand that. And that could be somebody, a mother who sends her kids off to school every day, right? And just comes in for 3 or 4 hours for 3 days a week or something. It's unbelievable. And then maybe if they've got a little skill, you can eventually train them and bring them up to a skill level that would be valuable in the future. So,
yeah. I love that. I'm a huge systems guy. I love building systems and having them in place and then figuring out ways to, make them better, make them more efficient, as we've been talking about. So I love that I love what you're saying. So now that you've stepped away from the workroom and your focus is on helping others improve theirs, when you go into a workroom to train a team, what's usually missing?
I don't know. That's a blank.
Okay.
I mean, every workroom's different, but it depends. So like the class I'm teaching, those are workrooms coming to me. They are ones who are already learning. They've got their finger on the educational opportunities out there. The workrooms that I go into with hired help and new management, they are missing current. They're still doing it the same way it's always been done and haven't kept up with processes that could be help to streamline things.
Yeah. How do you approach teaching efficiency without overwhelming them? You mentioned the fire hose earlier.
Oh yeah, I overwhelm them right from the start. It's a given, but we use the student handbook. That's my stylus or whatever they call it. I just go through page by page through the handbook, and then we stop periodically, and I encourage them to just make small samples, practice this. A lot of them, some will already know this and some will already know that. And depending on how much they've had their finger on or have been watching me, they might know a lot. But still, and also is the discussions. Somebody will pipe up and say, well, I've been doing it this way. And everybody, so we do homework every night, those 3 things, right, that you learned today. And I'm always praying they find 3. They usually find 10, but we go around the table the next morning and it always fascinates me. There's a certain few favorite, tips or techniques that everybody does, but this one might write down something that one said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we learn from each other too.
Love that. Yeah.
I want to publish that student manual. That's my goal to do in the next year or two, but it won't quit changing. I just keep adding to it. So I got to figure out how to cut it off.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, fantastic tips. I really do appreciate it. I wanted to zoom out before we wrap up and talk about kind of the industry as a whole. What do you think the window treatment industry gets right when it comes to workrooms?
I think we can thank Cheryl Strickland for bringing workrooms out of their basements and getting and opening up discussions on the very first forums. She was there. Workrooms, they work by themselves. They don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of or whatever. So she brought the conversation out into the open and got us to looking around and realized, for a long time there, you couldn't get, if a woman was charging $10 a width to make a panel, now, gosh, a panel costs you $100 and up, depending on who the designer, the workroom is and all. And so they weren't making any money. And so they were like hoarding their information because, oh no, you might take my clients if I teach you this, right? And I think there was a lot of that for generations. And if you look back at books from the late 1800s, the techniques in those, if you can figure out what they're talking about, were lost. For just basic techniques for controlling fabrics from flare and how to cut to create a pattern or whatever. Those were lost because nobody would share it. Now they share everything. So Cheryl opened that up, with her magazines, with her school, with her forums. And then Kitty Stein ran with it with her pricing book, right? And got people to start realizing that they're worth more and they can charge more and they should. Michelle Williams took that even further with her classes. So doing it right, if you are a workroom who is tapping into education in the industry and paying attention, there's so much information out there, so much being shared, and at such a reasonable price, right?
Yeah.
So I would say they are getting that right.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Couple rapid fire questions for you. What's one tool or setup change you wish every workroom would adopt?
I wish they'd all hire a utility worker.
Okay.
An unskilled utility worker. Their productivity would go through the roof. And it gives them a potential line towards some, a skilled worker down the road.
Yeah. I like that one. What's the most overrated practice in a workroom?
Perfectionism and unnecessary handwork. There's a lot of workrooms I still see, they do little videos on there and there they are sewing away. It's like, you could have done that with a machine, And so I don't want to disparage somebody who puts that kind of personal touch.
Right.
But you better be charging for it. And you better be letting your client know this is what you're doing for them. Yeah. I have a colleague here. She was both designer and workroom. So she would go out and, sell the job and then she would make it up. And she had incredible creativity and she would do her own installs. So she was incredible. But what she would do is after she installed something and dressed it out, she would then take her client over to it and say, look, isn't this gorgeous? Look at this detail. Look what I added here just to make it look better for you. She would resell it to her client. So what's her client going to tell all her friends and family when they come through? Look what she did for me, right?
Yeah.
I think they do a lot too much handwork, sewing on trim and stuff like that. But if you are doing it, then be sure to charge for it and let your client know this is what they're getting for that, right? Yeah. Don't go telling other workrooms that this is the only way to do it because that's not true.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Thank you again so much for all the awesome tips and wisdom that you've given us. Last question. If somebody listening takes just one action after this episode, what do you think it should be?
Pull out your paperwork, see the continuity and how you do each job, whether you do it with forms or, scribble, and start identifying the weak spots or where the bottlenecks, and just take that little spot there and make a form, make a checklist or something. And also start looking at go to the Curtains and Soft Furnishings library and start looking at those circle time. They're constantly creating new content as well as the old webinars that they have. And WCA has all those webinars. The Workroom channel on YouTube has incredible amount of information on real workrooms, workroom tours. They go into small little tiny rooms where people have a workroom, into these large commercial spaces and do a tour. They're amazing.
That's great. Well, thank you again for everything that you've added today. If somebody wants to learn more about you, where should they go?
kjohnson.com.
Oh, love that.
That's my website. Yeah. I developed that when I was easing out of the workroom and easing more into the teaching part of it. So
love that. They can go there. They can learn about your classes, about the different things, and obviously contact you as well.
Contact me too. Yes, definitely.
Perfect. That's great. Well, thank you again for being on today. I do appreciate it.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me, Will.
Yeah, no problem. So that was such a practical conversation with Ann, and honestly, a bit of a reality check for a lot of us. If you're running a workroom and constantly feeling like you're busy but not making progress, there's probably something in your workflow that needs attention, not just more hours in the day. If you found this helpful, share it with somebody in the industry who's in the trenches right now. And as always, follow Marketing Pains for more conversations like this, where we break down what's actually working in real window treatment businesses.